Okay, so welcome everybody. This is our Zoom discussion with the WPN on a lot of the things that we have to think about for our reopening and to reopen safely. So there's no end, I think, to the amount of details we can talk about. I think we just wanted to try to keep it to some specifics so that we can really, we've been kind of talking in a lot of theoreticals lately. And so I think for those of us that are trying to put together plans, the more specific we can get on what we're actually thinking we will do. And I know some venues have already put out some drafts of some things. So if you've read through any of those, or if you've seen things that you want to discuss that's, you're thinking is good, is not good, or there's red flags with certain things that you're thinking about, the floor is yours. So I'm gonna open it up, and if there's somebody that's got a burning question or a burning issue that they wanted to discuss first, jump right in. Everybody's always so shy in the morning. If not, I'll get it going, but I'll give you guys another minute to think about it. Okay, so we talked a lot about social distancing within our venues in the last discussion, a lot about the ticketing. One of the things that did come up at the end of the discussion last week was how will we limit touch points? So I did see in one of the guides that instead of having ushers tear tickets, that they would have patrons tear their own tickets and like drop them in a bucket by the usher. And then, some people are going to credit card only at the box office to limit the exchange of cash and things like that. So I guess we can start with thoughts on that. Kim, are you raising your hand or are you just waving at somebody? Waving, okay. So any other ideas on, I know a lot of us have issues with trying to figure out how to socially distance in bathrooms. Some people have said that they may eliminate intermissions to help solve that problem. Anybody have strong thoughts on like what they think is a really good practice that absolutely should be done? What they think is a red flag? I was kind of thinking along the lines of some of the ticketing things again. So if we go back into the ticketing issue, because I was thinking about seat maps versus general admission versus all that, but we did kind of cover a lot of that in the last discussion. So if there's more operational things, and then, again, do you temp people as they walk in, masks, all that stuff. So Tiana, you got to start us, get it started.
So it's in line what you're talking about with ticketing, and it's something that was brought up last time, and I've been in some webinars lately that I don't think we know where to go with it. But once we get the tickets into the hall and we have our seating maps already limited in seating, do we go to timed entrances? And how do we do that? Because how do we get someone in the center row, especially if your auditorium or venue doesn't have the breaks? And how do you do it safely, but also how do you get it so people are not coming in an hour before a show starts? Because we want to limit the time that they're in there as well. And I was thinking about ways, because we're at a campus at college and our parking is not convenient. So I was thinking about what if we do a check-in, like restaurants are going to that, where you check in that you have arrived and then they do the seating points. But what if that person's at the end of the aisle? So I'm just kind of looking at that. Do we have reserved seating, or do we do general admission and sit them as they're coming, even though that might not be the spot they want to sit? So that's kind of integrating the ticketing / operations.
Thanks, Tiana. Yeah, that was one thing I had thought about when I saw the kind of restaurant style seating idea. Was, you know, what happens though when I have a patron that doesn't want to sit near the front or doesn't want to sit near the back, and then I'm having a debate with them as I'm trying to get everybody else seated, because I know my patrons and I know that that's well, I want to sit in this particular area, and then, you know, if you have everybody that wants a seating preference, you're never going to get the show started by the time you try to negotiate with everybody. So that was kind of like my thought too, was I liked the idea of seating people as they come in and keeping it socially distanced. But I don't know, I kind of had a lot of red flags with that as well. Other thoughts? The other thing that I think that I'm a little worried about too with the check-in kind of thing is so much of that with my patrons, if a lot of them are older, I don't know that they're going to check in on a phone or an app or any of that stuff. I mean, that's probably going to be very foreign to them. Pat, I think I saw your hand.
I was just going to say, when we do the information to our patrons and we talk about general admission, one of the things I think we need to stress is that we will be seating people as they come in where we feel it is convenient, and they will have to know that they will not get the seats that they want this year. I think that has to be pretty clear, that we're going to space people out as we see it in a safe manner, and they just have to be happy they're there and seat wherever we tell them.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think having signage in the lobby that's big and bold and says, like, don't even ask, because we can't deal with it right now, in a nice way, of course. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually love that signage idea. But what have you thought about how your patrons would respond if you put out something as you're selling the tickets, which says, we can't, we'll be determining this time as we move through this, you know, safety protocol where you sit. If you're comfortable with that, please buy a ticket and join us. We can't wait to see you. But know that you're going to have, it's going to be a lottery. You're going to just be where you be. What do you think your patrons would say or respond to that?
Thanks, Karen. Pat.
I'm thinking at the point that we start doing this again, they're going to be so glad to be able to come out and go to a show that they'll be happy with whatever we decide. At least that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think the only exception you need to communicate is with the exception of handicap accessibility. Of course, we were going to make sure that we are accommodating to those that have the need, but everybody else, you know, you're gonna get where you get. Mary, go ahead.
I definitely think you would have to tell them that up front when they buy the ticket, not wait till they arrive. My concern with our patrons would be, excuse me, we usually open our front doors an hour before the show and the theater doors a half hour. And we already have our older patrons who come when they have a reserve seat an hour before. So they're the first ones in there getting to their reserve seat. My concern would be with people showing up earlier and earlier, trying to be the first ones in, and then having to keep them distance for an hour until the doors open. I think up front they would accept that idea, but then how they would act on it could cause more problems. And I'm still I'm just not sure we can afford to do less than 2/3 seating. So it may be a moot point as I moot myself.
Thanks, Mary. Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay from River Arts and Prairie du Sac. At one meeting, I feel oh, can you hear me?
Yep, you broke up for a second, but you're back. So just start over.
At one point, I thought someone mentioned that they were doing general admission until like the week of the show and then sending out tickets with seating numbers. Is that person on the call and could elaborate on that? It sounded like an interesting concept of it's all general admission, but then it kind of gives us the power to still assign seats in advance to avoid that problem of people stampeding in to get their favorite seats the day of the show. But it sounds very tricky too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the tricky part with that is you're then, depending on how you would do that, if you're having then everybody come to get those seat assignments at will call, you've got that herd of people right there again at the will call line. What I'm thinking for my venue of doing is going ahead with a seat map that has the holds and I don't know if you guys saw the document that came out from Governor Evers. The entertainment and arts one said that 2 seats between each party was good for socially distancing. So what I've done is I've put together a seat map that has 2 seats between each of the seat groupings. So I've done like 2s, 3s, a couple of 4s, and then every other row is blocked off. And then what I'm going to do is actually not put ticketing online, because I don't want somebody buying the middle seat of a group of 3, because then that blows that whole grouping. So I would just keep it in the box office. They would have to call or come in to get their seats. And then if somebody wants to buy like a 2 out of a group of 3, we can shift those holds as they buy them and still, kind of keep seating groups together. Because I just think that for my patrons, they're going to want to know that they have their seat, and that's going to help them. I think it's going to help get them in quicker, and all of that stuff. So that's kind of I had started thinking general admission, but I'm kind of going more in that direction of an actual reserved seating map with the blocked off seats, and then just really keeping it within control of my box office, not putting it online. So that's kind of, but I'm still kind of thinking of when do I go on sale time frame, because especially us being in a college, we've got band and choir concerts as well, and I just don't know if those are going to happen. So at this point, I'm holding my brochure back a little bit so that I can put some of this language in there that, like, tickets won't be available online. And there's still going to be limited availability, and we'll do the best we can to, honor your preferences. But, some people may not be able to get their exact same seats that they want. So I want to hold the brochure to be able to update that language a little bit. And then I actually moved a September show over to April. So I've got some revisions to do for that. So my brochure is going to be held till probably mid to late June now, which I'm okay with. And I think my patrons will be understanding that, we're working on stuff. So that's kind of the direction that I'm going with the seating stuff for my specific venue. Josiah.
Good morning, everyone. This is Josiah at the Macomb Brooks Performing Arts Center in Watoma. So let's say you have a rescheduled show from this season that's sold out, and you have to follow the social distancing guidelines. What do you do then? Do you tell these patrons, like, unfortunately, your ticket isn't going to be valid for that show because we have to do social distancing? Like, how do you go about with that? Because I think that's going to be the killer with all this. Yes, my rescheduled show, the big one, isn't until May of next year, but who knows? This whole social distancing might last until 2021. It may last until 2022. Who knows? It could happen. But that's my concern now as we're talking about this for next season, but also for what are we going to do with this rescheduled shows as well?
Great question. Tiana?
I was in the APAP session yesterday, and when they were talking about that, they mentioned, if speaking with the artists, if they could break up their show so you could still honor those tickets. So instead of having the one show, they could do 2 in a day, but obviously you have to distance how close your shows are to make sure there's enough cleaning done, or doing it over a 2-day period if an artist feels comfortable staying in a hotel in your area. So they mentioned that. I don't know if that's if you're able to do that or not, or if it's a conversation that you can start.
Thanks. Kim?
Good morning. It's Kim from the Wild Center in Sheboygan. I was really pleased, Tiana, to your point. I was reading something on Facebook, and John Miller, who does a winter dance party, he said, how about we as artists think about what our venues are going through and the fact that they can't have as many people in the theaters. Maybe we need to start considering giving them 2 concerts. And I think that's really the first time I've heard any artists say, you know, what are we going to do to also help this whole thing?
Cool. Thanks, Kim. Other thoughts, comments, Matt?
Good morning, everyone. Matt from the Capitol Civic Center in Manitowoc. Nice to see you. We're wrestling, well, we're all wrestling. Our businesses are all different. We have some different problems in different venues. I have a couple of shows that I moved that are sellouts. And I just don't see it financially viable to do one performance with a quarter of an audience. And so I'm inclined to try and cancel that contract due to the coronavirus conditions. And from the artists I've talked to and agents, they're gonna be fairly cooperative. I mean, everyone's going through something very new, but we just can't do shows, I don't think any of us can do, where we're constantly losing money to get a big name in when we can only sell 25, 30% of our seats. We'll probably just not do those shows for a while.
Thanks, Matt. Mary, go ahead.
I really like the idea of asking artists to spread it out. But again, if you have for us, if we have a sold out show, it would probably take more than 2 shows. And some of ours are already scheduled for 2 in a day. 2 other back thoughts though to earlier, Lonnie, I don't think I saw the thing that you mentioned about 2 seats in 1 row in between. If later you could forward out a link or where you saw that.
Just put it in the chat, Mary.
Okay, great, thank you. The other thing I haven't heard it differently, and I want to check if anyone else did, is even after Safer at Home ends, even after only, let's say they go from 50 people to 250 or 500, I assume we are assuming that whatever those numbers are, the distancing thing is going to apply for much longer than as the numbers are changing. Is that everyone's impression?
I know once we get to a certain phase, social distancing won't be required, but I think all of us can agree some level of social distancing is going to be necessary for the comfort of our patrons. I think that's kind of where the thinking is going. I think it's once we get to phase 3 and of the Badger bounce back and they open everything up, social distancing, I don't think is going to be like a requirement, but you can imagine people are still going to be very cognizant of it. If I'm wrong, somebody speak up. So another thing that is kind of a big, I guess, discussion point. I also want to make sure that we get to those of us that do concessions and bar and those kinds of things. I do want to talk about like the operational realities of that. And kind of one of the questions too that I kind of saw, I don't know if it was on the listserv or somewhere else, but are you going to require patrons to wear masks? And then if you do, are you going to sell concessions and have them trying to eat with a mask? So those were kind of the 2 things that went hand in hand. It was, the mask discussion of what should we be requiring it? And then of course, if we require it, should we have those available in our venues to either, pick up or buy for a nominal fee? And then again, along with that, or we can talk about it separately, how you handle, I know so many of us, not me because I'm on a dry campus, but so many rely on, the alcohol sales and the bar sales and things like that to really help their bottom lines as well. So, I've seen some things already saying bartenders will wear gloves and that, you know, no one would have any food that's like just out. You would have to do more prepackaged things like that. But anybody been thinking along those lines for their venues as far as how you would actually handle, you know, patrons wearing masks, staff wearing masks, and then you know, obviously, and we, you know, there's the whole social distancing in the lobbies and restrooms piece as well. So any thoughts on any of those things, or kind of game plans that you're thinking you're going to go with at this point that we could discuss? Kathleen.
In from Cedarburg Performing Arts Center. I don't know what we're actually doing with our season, so this might be not even an issue we need to think about. But we have a volunteer group that comes in and does our concessions for us. They've already told us they will not be doing that. If we have performances, we were thinking of going to no intermissions anyway. We don't have a bar because we're part of a school district, so we're just kind of eliminating, we may be eliminating performances, so it might be an issue, but no intermission, no concessions. If we did have performances, when we don't have intermissions regularly, we put out free little bottles of water anyway. We would probably still do that, but it would be very simple.
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, that was actually one of the things I thought of too, because I saw somewhere like water fountains, we call them bubblers. You have to, you know, cone those off, you know, you probably don't want people using those. So I kind of thought if we don't do concessions, we would still make sure that people know they could take a bottle of water into the hall with them. Because again, I have so many folks that have, you know, clearing their throats and all this stuff. And so if I don't have a water fountain available to them in my lobby to go out and get a drink, I need to make sure that there is an opportunity for them to have something like that with them in the venue when they come. And again, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it, you know, that these are all things too that we want to try to communicate ahead of time. You know, if people are used to that, if people are used to coming in and having intermission and having a little snack and things, that we make sure, whether we can get it in our brochure or we can get things out and really good communication in the lobby, that these things may not be happening the way that people have been used to them. So I think the communication piece is going to be the really important one, because I think that for the most part, patrons will be understanding if they know ahead of time. But I think if it kind of catches them off on surprise, that's when you're going to get some grumpy folks. At least that's how patrons work. Anybody else with any of those issues? Josiah.
I wanted to say thank you to Karen for sharing the WED post, because it actually is very helpful. There's a touch on there that's stating that they recommend all employees wear the face mask, like I currently do at the grocery store. But also it states something: if customers will not be able to stay 6 feet apart, that they recommend that either they bring their own face mask to the building or you provide it. So has anyone thought about that? And then also, trying to think, what was the other thing? Yeah, I would just say look at this, because I think a lot of our questions will be answered. A lot of it probably is going to be a headache a little bit, but some of it seems to be very helpful, because I'm kind of doing a skin through of it now. But now my only concern is, when is phase 3? Because we haven't even hit phase 2 yet. I don't even think we've even finished phase 1 or even started phase 1. So when is phase 3 going to happen? Because, I mean, I have a feeling that phase 3 isn't going to happen until Christmas. I have a feeling it's going to be a long time. So that's my concern after reading this a little bit. This little guideline thing is, when's phase 3? I mean, I want to know that now rather than later. But no, thank you, Karen, for posting that. So hopefully everyone takes a look at that.
Thanks, Josiah. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, so I can't imagine why you all didn't see that email that I sent out on Monday and the slew of thousands of emails that you get every day. But I'm glad to send it again, or post it here again. One of the things that I'm starting to see from different businesses is the sign, sort of prepping them for the changes that they're going to see coming in that you all are describing. I've seen the, we'll be ready for you, and here's how we'll keep you safe. And using that approach to say, basically, no concessions, or no intermission, or, you know, not full houses, or whatever, couched in really positive ways. I think is gonna, if you put that out there when you're putting out the, you can buy a ticket here, and here's what you need to know. We're gonna do everything we can to keep you safe. That approach seems to be resonating really well already with people who are chomping at the bit to get back into the mix.
Thanks, Karen. That's awesome. David.
Hi, I'm David. I'm with the Grand Oshkosh. And some of the things that we've been talking about are increasing staff. So it's kind of low tech, high labor. You know, adding people to open doors at the front, having a bathroom attendant, and adding, we've also talked about eliminating our full service bar and just doing pre-made, pre-packaged cocktails. A couple of the things we've talked about in addition to that, you know, you had mentioned social distancing and reducing capacity. For us, that kind of takes us from about a 550 seat hall to about 192. I think that patron education is going to be very important, as a number of people have said. You're going to have to get them ready for what they're going to see before they get there. Adding signage, public address in the lobby, just reminding people, hey, stay away from each other. This is what we're doing. Eliminating some of those points of contact. And nobody likes to be surprised, so I think
David, thank you, David. You were breaking up pretty bad. I was trying to get what you were saying. I'm not sure if you're finished, but I think you're also frozen. So hopefully, Gina, jump in and translate what David was saying.
Yeah, definitely. Gina Kunder, also from the Grand Oshkosh. So one of the things that David had touched on was like prepackaged drinks, whether that's like your little airplane bottle and a cup of ice and whatever, and you can mix it yourself, or just your pre-mixed, like my margarita in a can, whatever. So some of those things, eliminating touch points, and then additionally, he had touched on, you know, low tech, high labor, as far as like, do we have people stationed at the doors and they're the ones with gloves on opening doors, and bathroom attendants to wipe things down, just to like help, you know, it's one person touching these things over and over versus 200 people touching these things once. So that was kind of, and I think the only thing that he had mentioned is we were also potentially thinking about like eliminating coat check, because if you already have a bunch of seats that are going to be empty, you might as well throw your own coat on the seat next to you versus having somebody touch other personal belongings.
Great. Thanks, Gina. And thanks, David. Any other thoughts on that? Otherwise, I have, and I think a lot of our decisions will be guided by some of the guidelines that are coming out from, you know, the state, which will be helpful for those of us that are in colleges and universities. We're going to be guided by whatever happens and whatever our administrations put out. So there's a lot of great things coming out now. as I have time with a 10-month-old, I will try to put some of these resources. I've got like a whole little folder going on my desktop and somewhere in my email too. I'll try to get these in a forum so that we all have, you know, all of these different resources, since again, there's just so many emails coming through and some things just get missed. So I'll try to start a forum for all of these guides and things. That'll be a nice resource center. So as you have things, please try to add them as well to the that resource page once I get it started. Josiah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. How many of you are going to start putting, if you don't do this anyways, how many of you are going to start putting sanitizing stations at your box office window as soon as they walk into the lobby? Because I've been considering doing it at the box office window, right before they enter the lobby doors, one station to my far left when you enter the auditorium, another one between our concession window, which we only sell water for, and then the other doors, and then looking at possibly doing one between our two drinking fountains or bubblers or whatever you want to say. I don't know if that's a little too excessive. Right now, I know that Uline has a few. I know a lot of places don't have much, but I'm just wondering if anyone has an idea or if you're going to be doing that or not.
Thanks, Josiah. That brought a lot of hands up, so awesome. So I don't know if people are just raising their hands showing that they are doing it, but I'm going to call on people that have hands up. So Brock, you're first, then Kim.
Hi, Brock from the Widener Center up in Green Bay. We've been looking into that. One of the big things the CDC has recommended is that they do not, or they have to be touchless. So if you get a lot of the newer ones or not newer ones, existing ones, you have to pump them or press them. The CDC says you can't use those. So if you do get them, make sure they're touchless, which here, UW Green Bay, we're trying to find them, and we can't find touchless ones anywhere. So just throwing that out there.
Oh, thanks. I wouldn't have thought of that. Kim.
Hi. I put in an order for stands and touchless sanitizer machines in March. Still not here. Not sure when they'll become available. So that's the kind of backlog we're looking at. Every company wants them everywhere. So I'm just hopeful that that's something they catch up on. But yeah, I think that the sanitizers being available, but I think we need to rope them down somehow too. I think if they're just sitting on a counter, they're going to disappear. It's going to be tough for us to get that and then maintain it. We can cover it for a show or two, but if we're going to start to empty these containers every time we have a show, these are costs that we're all going to have to consider. These sanitizing costs are going to be for every single show. And I don't see how that is going to help us with our reduced audiences. It's just another thing to have a stomachache about. Our costs are going to be every single time more than we're used to. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Karen?
Sorry, muting. Yeah, the museums are actually really worried about this too, because they don't just have one, performance or several performances. We've got people coming constantly every day. So it's an issue of not only cost, but supply. If you have the money for it, fantastic. Do you have access to it? Everybody, as you said, is going to want this stuff. And right now, it's really hard to find. One museum said, we could open tomorrow. We've got our protocols down, but we have enough cleaning supplies for 2 weeks. And then we'd have to close down again. So this is an issue that's very, very front of mind for lots of people. And as much as I love the CDC, I have to say that really, I think your patrons would be more comfortable having some way to do a pump touch thing than to have nothing at all. So I'm certainly not saying you shouldn't follow CDC rules. I would never say such a thing. But I think that there's probably going to be some creative problem solving that has to be put into place as we all move forward.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, you may have to have the hand sanitizer usher in there. Josiah?
So I don't know if these would be CDC approved, but could you, because I know there's a lot of local farmers and local people that make hand sanitizer. Could you use that as an option, or is that just against every business rule in the world? And you shouldn't be using your local farmers hand sanitizer, because I've noticed that a lot lately where people are using that, or they're using alcohol. Like if they have to dump alcohol, they're using the alcohol content to build to make hand sanitizer. Is that an option? I don't know if anyone else has thought of that, but I'm part of this Farm Direct Wisconsin Facebook page. And so I'm learning a lot of things about the local agriculture industry and stuff like that. And hand sanitizer is one thing that I've kind of caught my eye, because I know there is a decline with production on that stuff. So could you look at your local farmers or your next door neighbors that uses it? I don't know. That's just a thought.
Thanks, Josiah. Or we all just do a side business of making hand sanitizer, and that will keep our venues sustained. There we go. Problems solved. I don't know. I mean, I imagine that however hand sanitizer is made and approved for use, that if those farmers are going through the same process of getting it approved as hand sanitizer, I guess I wouldn't see why you couldn't use it. Kathleen?
I don't know a lot about hand sanitizer, but I know one of the things is there are those types of hand sanitizers available, but it's just a big bottle of it. So you'd have, and it's like water. So you'd have to have an appropriate way to use it. Like the containers or the dispensers are really what is missing. Those are what I think is not existing right now. So I think you can come up with ways to have hand sanitizer. Getting it from the container to the patron is tricky. So.
Thanks, Kathleen. Tony?
Yeah, I saw a new design for a floor-mounted hand sanitizer, but it takes the pump bottles and it has a foot pedal. So you put your hand in a slot, you push the foot pedal, and the sanitizer is dispensed. So yeah, it's I think somebody might come out with a great invention for solving our problem.
Thanks, Tony. I think also, then this is just my opinion, which is not a medical opinion whatsoever, but as far as I know, hand sanitizer at some point is going to become, the virus may become immune to it, or certain things, make the hand sanitizer less helpful in those senses. So I think as we go down through the stream of time, I don't know that we'll necessarily need to keep those in our venues as people get as we get vaccines and other things. So I don't know that this is a forever change. If we start implementing these in our venues, we may have to think in the next couple budget years to maintain it. But I think, I don't know, again, my personal opinion is eventually I think it'll be able to go away as people become more comfortable and we really come out of this, which who knows when that may be. But I'm going to kind of shift us away. If you have more hand sanitizer things to talk about, we can certainly start a forum discussion or other discussions. But I do want to shift us over a little bit to something that came up. I don't know if it was yesterday, it was this week. I think APAP did a discussion, and one of the other things, we're all focused on the audience, we're all focused on our lobbies and so much of that, because of course that's kind of the forefront. But there is also then the issue, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, of bigger artists coming in. If you have a group of an artist that is 20 people, it's the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and there's 20 or 30 of them, and your backstage spaces will not allow you to socially distance them. There's a whole new set of issues with operational logistics for that. And then also with that too, I mean, and I think this is going to be one of those discussions where every artist is going to have different requirements or things of that Obviously, if they're riding on a bus together to you, you know, you may not have to worry too much about the social distancing within your spaces, but I think there's a lot that needs to be said for how we're also going to communicate the safety of the artists in our backstage spaces and what we're going to do to keep them safe and the cleaning that's going to go on back there. And that was something that hadn't really been on my radar until I heard it yesterday, thinking about, you know, we have to care for our patrons and make sure they're safe. We have to care for our own staffs and make sure they're safe, but we do also have artists coming in, and all of this extends to our backstage amenities as well, and how we're going to serve them meals, and how, you know, I used to do a little buffet style meal when I had a big group. That may not be the way I can do it anymore. And that there's going to also be extra communication with this, as the artists are going to want to know what you're doing, or they may have additional requirements in their riders for what they would require for spacing, social distancing, other measures. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We can discuss it, or we can keep moving on to other, you know, front of house issues, but that was something that kind of came on my radar yesterday that I thought, oh, there's another thing. Woohoo. So I'll throw that out there for discussion or thoughts. Jillian, and then John, I see your physical hand. Jillian, you go first.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jillian, Lawrence University. Actually, I got an email this week, Lonnie, from one of the agencies who put out guidelines for their artists. So I'm happy to share that email with everybody, but it does detail kind of what they would like. Again, that what we'll start seeing in riders, but like hand sanitizer off the stage door, you know, any props or anything that's being used, that they're being wiped down and sanitized before use or in between shows. And definitely social distancing backstage. If you have like a lot of staff in your backstage area, they are asking you to limit that. So like I said, I'll be happy to share that out with the group.
That'd be great. Thanks, Jillian. John.
Hey, everybody. John Hassig, Market Center in Milwaukee. We actually have a group of employees that are looking at different aspects of reopening. The front of house team was really looking at front of house operations. And then we just put together a back of house team that really looked at all of our spaces that are back of house, including the wardrobe room and, you know, the loading dock and the common spaces between theaters, because our theaters, we have a common hallway that connects all the theater spaces backstage. And we were looking at, you know, the check-in process at the stage door and how they go through security. And so, yeah, if you think socially distancing your audience is going to be tough, socially distancing the stagehands is a whole nother discussion. The things that were coming up pretty quickly were buffets for stagehands, buffets for artists, that pretty much that's going to be over. Like, there's no way we can set out a tray of hummus and just let people go at it. Like, that's just not going to happen anymore. So we're looking at, you know, we're putting together sort of backstage procedures based on the phases of the bounce back of what can we do in phase 2, what can we do realistically in phase 2, and then what can we realistically expect in phase 3? Because phase 3 is where we're sort of back to normal, you know, the new normal of our operations when we can gather more than 50 people. So yeah, the proximity backstage is tight. Thinking about spacing in phase 2, like if you have orchestras on stage, do you consider, hey, all you wind players are going to have to be behind a split screen all the way up stage, and just separating the winds from the strings and the singers from each other. And like, you know, there's a lot of that stuff is really going to be unreasonably expensive to attain, you know, to say, hey, can we put, you know, a full band on stage with singers? Like, probably not. But thinking about backstage and entrances and exits and how you can do traffic patterns like they're doing in grocery stores to say, hey, you're gonna go this way if you're downstage and you're gonna go this way if you're upstage, just sort of thinking proactively about that stuff. So what we've done is we really have been looking at every single room backstage, every single space, and saying, what can we do in here? What do we recommend? Where do the hand sanitizers go? Getting rid of, if you have air dryers in your restrooms backstage, getting rid of those, because that's just going to blow everything all over your room. And looking at, you know, where do we recommend face mask covering? Where do we provide it? Because if we said, hey, every show that comes in, we're going to give you face masks, then we'll close in a month. You know, just financially, it's not possible. So we've been working on that for a bit, and I've been tapping Jared's brain as well at Overture, and Gerald up at Fox Cities. And when we have something solid, we'll share it with everybody, because it's, we're basically taking the Event Safety Alliance, we're taking the Performing Arts Center Consortium recommendations, we're taking the CDC guidelines, we're taking the Badger Bounce Back guidelines, and we're just looking at what does that mean for backstage. So we're almost, we have a, yesterday I did a version of the document that's 15 pages. So right now I'm trying to make it like 3. But it's, you know, it's a matter of, you know, mentally walking through your space and saying, where are your touch points? Where are your high traffic areas? And then looking at how do we clean those and how do we keep people safe?
Thanks, John. That's really helpful. Jared, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Jared from Overture Center in Madison. Just wanted to thank John. We have met a couple times now, or you know, by phone, and have had a good time sort of hashing out all the details. It's been nice to connect like that. It's been nice to get that ball rolling like that. I do want to. I think that there has been some. I think I have been a doom and gloom guy a couple of times on these meetings, and I hate to continue to do that. But I do think it's incumbent upon us to start recognizing how serious all of this is when it comes to the financial aspects of it. And you know, I've heard at least 3 times in this meeting alone how X and Y procedure will bankrupt us within a month. And I think that that's only the 3 that were mentioned this time, but almost all of these procedures are going to have enormous cost to us per show, per month. And I would suggest that we start thinking about these in a way that is long-term as well, not just a, you know, well, once we get back to normal. I think that's not going to be a reality for a long time. And I think that we sort of need to start practicing saying that so that we get used to it, and start looking towards longer term fixes that we can do with regards to sharing resources and sharing these ideas and things like that. Because sort of thinking about it in terms of, well, how can I space everybody out 2 seats? That's not real. No one can do that and survive on that revenue, while at the same time affording the cost of all the new equipment and procedures and things like that. The second thing I wanted to mention real quick was the PACC, which is Performing Arts Center Consortium, is working with IAVM. They have a task force that is creating a document that is specifically looking at the operational side of reopening. That is in draft form right now. I've seen a couple of different versions fly by while I was working, while I was at a IVM panel discussion, and they're within the next week or so, I think that will be coming out to everybody through IAVM first, and then I assume it'll be available more widely after that. I highly recommend that this be an integrated part of your reopening strategy and your written plan to everybody, so that we sort of have some framework that connects all of us. John's his procedures that he was mentioning, there's a lot of similarities there already based on things that we've all sort of seen. So there's the similarities are actually what's positive, is that we're all thinking the same thoughts, which is good. But so long as we are doing that and have some of the same language, I think that will help normalize some of the new procedures to audiences more effectively across multiple centers and across the region, but also nationally as well. I think right now the big ones to look for are this new PACC document, the ESA documents that came out recently, and those are the big ones. I'm hoping that, and I've been asking for from the other groups, that we start connecting these dots between operational side, program side, artist side, and then finally budget side, because I think that's really going to be where the rubber meets the road at the end of the day. So hopefully we get these documents connected, we get these procedures connected to all of us, and we have some actionable stuff within the next couple months.
Thanks, Jared. Can you remind us what IAVM stands for? I remember VM is venue managers, I think.
Yes, sorry, that is the International Alliance of Venue Managers. And IAVM, if you're not already a member, I think there was a resource that I posted last week that shows some of the webinars, many of which are accessible to non-members right now, some of which are not. And if there's any further questions, I'm happy to take those online, but offline from this online.
Thanks, Jared. And I always appreciate your perspective. I don't see you as a gloom and doom guy. I see you as a realist, and you keep it real for all of us. And
I appreciate that.
Me as the cockeyed optimist, though, will say thank you, Jared, because you just also, we have some very, very tangible things that we can communicate to our donors that we need. And we can message these things in a very specific way, how they can help us. And it's much more real than just give us some money and, you know, it'll go somewhere. We have some very specific messages we can give to our donors now of how we need help. So thank you. Karen and then Kim.
Yeah, I'll echo. There's a place for doom and gloom, and I think that it's important to bring it into the mix. So thanks for that, as well as the practical stuff. I would respectfully push back a little bit and say that one of the things that makes the Wisconsin Presenters Network so amazing is that it has presenters all along the spectrum, of very small school-based rural presenters all the way up to organizations like the Overture and the Marcus Center. And so there are that won't have, that can do some of the things that you said there's no way we can do. So different situations allow for different freedoms. And I'm not saying that, you know, everybody shouldn't be sanitizing, but just to keep that in mind, different groups, if they're a volunteer group programming within a school, have different things to think about than others. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks, Karen.
Kim had her hand up, but she has gone. So if she comes back, we'll see if she had something to say. And I just wanted to say too, one of my goals was to try to get some discussions together for us on Zoom based on our venue types. So all of those of us in colleges and universities could get together, connected to schools, could get together and just chit chat. Those that are doing Broadway, you know, obviously some of you guys are connecting already. That's great. And I so encourage that, because just because we're not having a Zoom discussion on it doesn't mean you can't reach out to a handful of presenters that you know do similar operations to you and get discussions going. I really encourage that, to reach out. And if you're not sure how to do that, this is going to be my commercial break while we see if Kim is going to come back. If you're not sure how to do that, or you have the desire for a smaller group discussion like this, please reach out to either me or your regional vice chair. If you would like to have a smaller discussion with venues that are similar to yours, and if you're not sure exactly who that is or where you should start, your regional vice chair, that's what they're there for. So please utilize them, as well as your steering committee and myself. So that's my commercial break. Kim is still not back. She may have gotten called away on something, but we have about 3 minutes left. So if there's any other really big, important issues that we didn't cover, as far as just the operational nitty-gritty of things, speak now. It's your last chance ever. Just kidding. There will be a lot more discussion on this. But if there's anything before we wrap this call up, please bring it forward.
I had a quick question for Kathleen. She mentioned the other day that they were doing some pretty serious cleaning methods. And I'm just curious, cost analysis wise, how effective you have found that to be. And did that come from the school district, or is that something that you found and just have implemented? Because I think that's the way everybody's going to need to go in terms of, you know, just fogging your rooms and cleaning everything. So I'm just curious if you would talk about that for a bit.
It is coming from the school district. It's protocols that they've had in place long before this. The UV lights are a little tricky because the ones we use are like the 6-foot standing ones. That doesn't reach a great distance. So although we can do areas, you have to move the lamp, for lack of a better term, several times to cover a larger area. But what has proven to be very effective is the fogging guns, which are great. I mean, you don't have to move anything. You don't have to move plants. You can just, I mean, they come in and do our office every day. Our computers on, off. I mean, it just is a light mist of some sort of bleach chemical that doesn't stain. I don't know the makeup of it, but you can do our theater in a couple minutes. And then you let it sit for, I don't know if it's 5 or 10 minutes, and then it's fine. And it's electrostatic, so it clings to things. So it kind of, and I think the guns are very hard to get right now. I mean, we use a system, it's called Protexus, Protexus. I can send out the link. But it works great. It's very effective. I mean, we've really just started to use it regularly or daily since COVID, but we were using it before that. I have no idea where you get them, but I can try to get some additional information.
Thank you.
And I don't think, I mean, they're expensive, but I mean, each gun or each unit is, I think, a couple $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. So it's not a cheap system, but you can cover a lot of ground very quickly.
And it's effective, and you will use less staff time to do it. So in the long run, the savings will be there.
Yes. I mean, we have our custodian comes in. I mean, they're probably in the theater, the entire theater thoroughly 5-10 minutes, and it's done. So it's a great system. And it would really help with people who wanted to do 2 performances in the course of a day, because it would really, that time frame to sanitize an entire building is shortened significantly.
Thanks, Kathleen. Got a train coming through? Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, I did add, we had some of the discussion for that, the UV stuff and some of those things going around on the listserv. Those are on the forum, all of those resources that Michael Duncan put out. And I believe, Kathleen, I put the link that you sent out there as well. You can certainly resend it, but there is a forum started on the website under, I think it's under the UV disinfectant stuff. So it is, the resources are there. Mary. Mary, you're still muted. Did you have your hand up?
Okay. I just wanted to ask Kathleen to clarify, when you use those fogging guns, does that then also eliminate the need to go through and like wipe every armrest and handrail? Does that cover like everything, and that's all you have to do then?
Well, we haven't had a performance for quite some time. So, I mean, our building was completely sanitized. We haven't had a person other than myself and a few staff members in here. As far as between performances, I think we would feel that that was enough, yes. I don't know all of the, our director of facilities kind of handles that on our behalf. So I don't know all the details of how long the sanitation takes place. Once we start having people back in the building, I will, that's on my list of things to pay closer attention to, just so I know. I just haven't had to recently. But yeah, that would be our means of sanitizing all of our bathrooms. I mean, we would still do the daily sanitation that we normally do. But so right now, that's just in addition to everything else.
Okay. Tiana?
Kathleen, obviously with all the cleaning that we're going to be doing, there's going to be a strong smell of cleaner, but does these guns do they have a really strong smell so you should wait? Or is the time frame in between of cleaning quickly, like, you know, I'm just curious of what this smell is like.
There is not a strong smell at all. I mean, there's a very slight, very pleasant odor. It's not a bleach smell. It's kind of a fresh smell, but absolutely no residual odor at all. I mean, it's not like if you use ant spray and you know, killing ants or something. I mean, you can't, that's ours. There's really nothing offensive about it, and not strong that I would think it would offend anyone.
Oh, fantastic. Diane?
I was on site when our custodians were using one of these guns once, and there was somebody in the room, and I said, well, can they be in there while you're doing that? Oh yeah, it's no problem. There's no, you can be right next to it. I'm right next to it, and it's not a big deal.
And you can have, I mean, we don't do this either, but like if you had food out, you could use it in a cafeteria, a kitchen, and spray, and it's not an issue. We don't practice that just because that seems a little odd, but it's, I think, like Diane said, it's pretty safe for everything, every situation.
Very cool. All right. Well, I think that we're at time. So lots of great stuff. Great discussion. Thank you all for your participation. And we could probably start 10 more discussions out of the things that we talked about today. So let me go ahead and we'll go ahead and stop this recording.